Hi, Giulio.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for being part of this next GUT Talks. It's a pleasure to have you here and to learn more about the activities and initiatives you're undertaking in your work. So just tell us quickly what you do and what you're involved in.
Okay, my name is Giulio Centemero. I'm a member of the Italian Parliament. In particular, I'm a member of the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies. Within the lower house, I'm head of delegation of Lega in the Finance Committee. Meanwhile, I'm also member of two international parliamentary assemblies. The first one is the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, called PAM. Within this assembly, I co-chair the economic panel. The other assembly is the Parliamentary Assembly for the Union of the Mediterranean. I'm member of the economic committee also there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask you to share a little bit more about, we know there are some new upcoming laws that have been voted recently. How can a government support, if you want, the rise of an ecosystem when we're talking about startups and innovation ecosystems? And we know that Italy is a little bit behind, but trying to catch up with other countries around.
Yes. Basically, the last financial bill was structured in order to help small businesses and to boost innovation with several measures. Because when you have a law, you have to choose, you have to set up your priorities, and those were our priorities of the last financial bills, which enter into force on the 1st January 2019. So one small thing was, for example, before there were a block of the turnover to hire professors and other employees in the universities, notwithstanding the budget of each university. For example, small young university like Udine or Bergamo, I'm talking about the public ones, they couldn't hire new professors because you could hire only 110% of the people retiring. And this was jeopardizing these universities because students were increasing, so they had cash in their accounts, because the students, of course, they pay a small fees because are public universities, but they couldn't have a quality education because the ratio between professor and students was not ideal. So we took off this turnover so that these universities, with their own means, they can hire new professor and specialize in new fields such as innovation, such as VC, and so on. The second measures were more on the financial sector, like we estimated that about 1 billion of investments will be facilitated in the next year on venture capital, startup, and the growth market. Because when talking about new companies, startups, or even SMEs, we always forget to say that, for example, other than the VCs, which have been taken into a good account in the last financial bills, but no one ever seriously thought of them in the previous year, because it's also a cultural thing. It's not in our culture, the venture capital practice. Other than that, there are also the multilateral trading facilities. In Italy, the most famous, it's AIM, Alternative Market of Capital, which is the stock exchange for small companies at the Italian stock exchange. But there are other multilateral trading activities like Extramot, always in Italy, which focus on bonds. There is the MIV, which where you can list your venture capital fund, for example, or in other countries there are, for example, Euronext for Amsterdam, Paris, Belgium, and more and more multilateral trading facilities. So the financial bills focused on this instrument, for example, dedicating 7% of the long-term saving plans to MTF and venture capital funds. Plus, there are several more advantages. For example, we reduced the bureaucratic fulfillments that innovative startups need to fulfill. It's something simple, but it takes time and effort from entrepreneurs that should be focused on the enterprises, not on the administrative part of the company. Then we raised the percentage of deductibility from taxes of people investing in startups, and we raised the limit for institutional pension fund, the limit allowed to be invested in what I will say it in simple words, to invest in private equity fund, in the saving plans, in venture capital funds, and so on. So basically we are trying to create the legal framework where investment in new activities it's easier. On the other side, on the pure tax side, the reform of the flat rate taxation took place with a first step, which is the raise of the turnover in order to apply to what we call the lump sum regime, where you pay like only 5% direct taxation and VAT is not applied. So if you are a simple company, we call it partita IVA in Italy, basically an individual company, you can open...
Like freelancers, for instance.
Like freelancer, it's specifically done for freelancer. I'm a chartered accountant. When I started, I was, I don't know, 24, 25, something like this. I had this regime, but now the taxation decreased and the threshold to apply increased up to 65,000 euros of turnover. You pay either 5% or 50% depending on the conditions. I used to pay like 20% up to 40,000 euros of turnover. This increased the number of new companies, because if we compare January 2018 to January 2019, we have 3,000 more partita IVAs in Italy.
Okay.
And this is a very simple way to start a company. People coming to Italy, but also Italians, they don't know that doing a company, starting an activity, it's so easy. One thing we can blame on us, on politics, but also on public administration, is that we don't advertise the good things we have. So, for example, if you study design in Milan, you want to open your activity, you can, even while you're a student, and you pay a very little amount of taxes. Supposedly, you don't even need a chartered accountant to do your accounting. So it's really, really easy.
Okay, and that's gonna encourage more people to start their own activity, and maybe get owners of companies rethink the relationship they might have with some of the employees to keep them, because now,
yes, of
you know, if you're quite active and you're good at what you do, you can, and you take this risk, you might, you know, just quit your job and do really well.
Yeah, I mean, consider that if you're being hired in a company, basically for the company your cost would be, I don't know, 60,000 euros per year, but you get 30,000 in your
Yes.
in your bank account. In this case, maybe you would prefer to open a VAT code to work for the same amount, but 60,000 euros minus 5% would be a much higher amount.
Sure.
Plus, you can work for other companies.
Yes.
So this is a great advantage. I mean, laws are good. Laws, they can create the legal framework, but what you call an ecosystem can be created only by a cultural revolution. Because we Italians, we have been sitting on our chairs for too long. We are not risk takers because for a while, starting from the 70s and the 80s especially, we thought to be Americans, but we are not. We're friends with the US, but we're Italians, so we are known for our creativity, we are known for our craftsmanship. My grandpa, my grand-grandpa, they used to have their own companies. You know, my grand-grandpa used to do sculptures.
Okay.
My grandpa used to be one of the first electricians at the beginning of the 20th century. My dad as well used to be an entrepreneur, then he got hired by a big multinational, which is fine, but meanwhile we forgot our skills. Now we have to get back to that because this is what makes the intellectual property of the country, so this is what makes the value of the country. In one next law decree, which is called the ggutt decree, there will be a simplification for procedures to register trademarks and patents.
Okay.
You know, so it will be like you put all the documentation in a file. You don't have to do a ruling to the public administration, to the tax administration in particular, so that it will be easier to register the IP. And IP is what it's most valuable, and we can see that, for example, in a country such as Switzerland, which is very small. Everybody thinks all their economy is related on finance, which is not true, because if you see, for example, the medical industry, the biomedical industry, or the pharmaceutical industry, more than production, they have patents.
Okay. True. They're with the States, they're one of the main countries when it comes to IP and so on.
Exactly.
And one last thing, I know that you're working as well to get expats, Italians, to come back to Italy, and there are some incentives here. So is this going to push the ecosystems to move forward in that direction?
There are two measures. One is the so-called repatriation measure.
Course, yes.
It already exists. We want to widen it up because before it was like only for managers.
Okay.
Now we would like to implement it towards entrepreneurs, reducing the taxable amount of the revenues down even to 10% if they go to live in a region in the south, because we're facing a depopulation of peripheric areas, not only the south, I have to say. Also in the northern part of the country, we think of alpine valleys or even cities like Pavia or Lecco, or not Milan, not Rome, not Florence, nor Naples. But smaller towns are getting depopulated. This is not good. This is not good for the country. So
if they have their headquarters or if they have an office there?
No. For people just to be resident there.
Okay.
So these advantages will be contained. Amendments have been presented yesterday in the simplification law, the 1074 law, starting from the Chamber of Deputies, will go to the Senate and come back to the Chamber of Deputies before becoming a law. But also, most probably, they will be in a growth decree, so they will be immediately applicable, so that if you are Italian citizen, you have been living for 3-5 years abroad or more, you can come back and enjoy this amazing tax regime, because we can do the legal framework, but most important is to have the experience of Italians and non-Italians, but this regime is applicable only to Italians who have been living abroad. They know what the world needs from us, what we can sell to the world. An elastic mindset and legal framework plus finance plus mindset. This can definitely improve the country, and in a period of disruption, economic disruption. This is needed because, okay, Italy, it's really binded to what happens abroad. For example, trade wars between US and China, for example, the Brexit, but all this risk can be a positive risk for us. The other measure related to Italians living abroad, and in this case not all Italians, is the one related to people who retired. Okay. I know this is not strictly related to innovation, but imagine if you have, I don't know, people from Sweden or from the US, okay, they already retired, they come to certain places in Italy, specifically in the south plus Sardinia. When we talk about the south, we always include Sardinia and Sicily, the islands. In this case, in towns with a population less than 20,000 people, and they would pay only 7% taxes for 5 years.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I hope that this will support the ecosystem to become one of the main ones in Europe, because Italy's always been at the heart of innovation for the past years.
Yeah,
so
I mean, even Leonardo da Vinci was in the heart of innovation.
Okay, thank you very much, Giulio.
Thanks to you and ggutt talks for having me.